Well, I think everyone here understands now why Mr. Manning was invited to speak. He certainly offered some very provocative insights into the political process and how we might advance sustainability through them. We do have a few minutes for questions, so there are 2 microphones. If you could approach the question, and we'd like you to make sure that you don't take more than 1 minute to frame and ask your question. But this is an opportunity to get advice on the politics of how we make change. Any questions? Yeah, there's one now.
Yes, Mr. Manning, my name is Bonnie Denhan. I'm from Red Deer. I see an almost immediate stumbling block to your most excellent ideas, and that is Alberta, the firewall province. We own our resources. This is what we hear day after day after day. How do we get past that to a national vision?
Well, I'd suggest that, particularly for people here from Alberta, that we start by applying some of these techniques here. And the one that comes right to the top in my mind is the issue campaign to raise sustainability measures much higher than they are now. And that has not been done. We've had all kinds of different groups working away individually in their own corner of the vineyard, and I'm not disputing the importance of that. But that doesn't create a united pressure on provincial or federal politicians to act on some of these recommendations as distinct from talking about them. Now, one of the histories of this province, and I shouldn't go into this in any detail, is this province has only had 4 administrations in 100 years. But every so often it has a political convulsion. And it had one in 1921 when there was a big concern and a new idea, and that day it was agricultural reform. It had another one in 1935, threw everybody out of the legislature and replaced with new people. The idea that the problem then was a depression, the solution was monetary reform. Had another one in 1971. When the issue was economic diversification and so forth and modernization of the economy. And this province is ripe for another one. And there's no reason why environmental sustainability can't be the big idea that causes that or supplements that revolution. So I'm advocating revolution.
Sure. So I'm Mike Brown from South Nation Conservation Authority near Ottawa.
Yeah.
And my question for you, Mr. Manning, would be, how do you get, I recognize you've sort of suggested to us starting issue groups and things like that, but how do you get politicians to think further than the next election? It seems to me that an awful lot of governments at all levels seem to be only focused at when the next election is going to be and how to strategize and how to do best in that election, and they don't think any further. And it seems to be a real struggle when you try to propose 5-year plans or 10-year plans or anything like that. It seems to be an awful big struggle to get that forward because they're just thinking about the next election. How do you, from your experience, even in particular in regards to your fighting the deficit in the 1980s and 90s, how do you get that forward? How do you make politicians think in the long term?
Well, I think there's 2 things you can do to that. Just so all of you can hear the question. The question was, how do you get political people that have this short-term horizon, the next election, to address these longer-term issues? I think 2 things you can do. One is you can recruit into politics people who do have a long-term view. Like in our system, people give more attention to hiring their rink manager than they do who's going to represent them in the legislature or the parliament. At least they have a job description of the rink manager. You got to drive the Zamboni and all that. How many people have got a job description of your elected official? And so the first thing is to recruit people into public life that have a longer view. And this does not start on the election day. It doesn't start by you picking out the names on a ballot. It starts by getting involved in the process that results in how those names got in the ballot in the first place, which is usually a nomination meeting somewhere at a schoolhouse on a certain night. And so the first thing to do is recruit people that do have a longer view. They're out there. On this deficit reduction thing, we recruited people to run for Parliament in the 1988 and 93 elections who mortgaged their homes to run in that election because they couldn't get money anyway. That's dedication. Because if they lost, they ended up, some of them would lose their homes. So you've got to find, that's dedication that goes way beyond one election. And then the second thing to do is in every long-term plan, there still is a first step or a second step that is within the next 2 years or 3 years. So you put up front, you say, want you to be committed to this grand vision of national sustainability like the Fathers of Confederation. But what was the first couple of steps? Let's get together in Charlottetown and talk about it. There was a first, and the first step was a very easy one for them to comply, because Sir John A. said, I'll bring the liquor and it'll be a great... So you have the big long term, but you put the first 1 or 2 or 3 things that can be done in the next year and get them into the process that way. So those are 2 suggestions for addressing a very real problem.
Okay, we're going to take one last question very quickly. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that speech. Lots to chew on, some sweet, some sour. My question to you is this idea of building vision and sort of having a vision that seems somewhat closed door. How do you get, in the Geological Society and the scientific, and what that actually did to First Nations by going across? It was a kind of, science was used naively as a form of colonization and erasure. How do you get a vision that is not closed door, like a small group that takes it out, that kind of makes assumptions, but is a vision that actually represents the diversity of a country that actually brings sustainability? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think if you want the vision to be broad and national and deep and take into account everybody and not just be a small group, that you have got to be very careful about who are the people that put this vision together. And I'd say one of the most important characteristics is they should be small d Democrats. They should not be elitists who think we've got it all figured out and now we just got to go out and sell it to those poor people that don't even understand it. If they're small d Democrats, they say we have some ideas. We're not going to come to a public audience with a blank sheet and say, I've got no idea what the vision is, what do you think? But they come with some idea, but they're willing to respond to when you get up and say, like, but your vision misses this, or your vision isn't big enough for this, or your vision may work in Calgary, but it doesn't work in Moncton or Victoria. I think the key to getting this vision so it is national and broad and deep is if it's pushed and promoted by small d Democrats that not only have an idea but will listen and accommodate what they've got to what they hear. Small d democracy, it answers a lot of things. Thank you very much.